What's going on, everybody? It is time for an emergency edition, and it's the good kind of emergency. An emergency edition of the Pack Therapy Podcast. I'm Tim Donnelly. Graham Hill joining me. We'll have another guest joining us in a little bit. Let's just call a spade a spade. The reason why we're having a emergency selection Sunday edition of the Pack Therapy Podcast is because we just watched NC State turn in the greatest ACC tournament run in the history of the conference, and they punched their ticket to the NCAA tournament. So a selection Sunday that looked like for a big part of the season it was going to be sad and depressing and watching other people live your dream is now guaranteed to be a celebration for the North Carolina State Wolfpack, which is nothing but good. Welcome. This is optimistic. This is all fun today.
For those who have been listening to Next Up, that runs from 9 to 10 with myself and Paul Eihander on 99.9 The Fan, ever since Tuesday when NC State defeated Louisville in the first round of the ACC Tournament, I've been asking, does it feel like 83? Does it feel like 83? Now, for context, I was not alive during 1983. My dad was a junior at NC State, but my dad called me last night after the game. I'm going to kind of break the forbidden door of sports radio a little bit. My dad's an NC State grad. He called me last night. He said, you just witnessed what I witnessed kind of when they made their national championship run. So for Wolfpack fans, what a week of emotions. And also, I guess for context, this is not sort of like a bandwagon thing that Tim and I are doing. Like, oh, we were going to wait until, they won the ACC Championship to do another Pack Therapy. You've been in D.C., Tim. So you've kind of witnessed a little bit firsthand what these runs have been like. Take us through for the viewers and also for myself, since I was back at the ranch holding it down, what it was like being at Capital One Arena, just kind of experience the emotions. And when did you start to think to yourself, this could be legit?
Well, first of all, the atmosphere was within like the NC State bubble in DC, because obviously everyone from the ACC is there. But within the NC State bubble, their optimism grew so much faster than I think even mine did. After their second win, the win over Syracuse, right? The win over Louisville was probably expected, right? They were one of the worst teams in the ACC. You were down 12 in the first half, but they battled back. That one's more expected. After Syracuse, and I've told this story on air a few times, there were like kind of screams from the team in the post-game locker room, and as they made their way to the locker room of two more, we need two more. And all the media members there are going, should one of us let them know they need three more? That they need three more? And Kevin Keas, who actually spoke with, I think it was Luke DeCock, another media member, basically said like, they'll figure it out. We need to take it one game at a time anyway. But I tell that story here to kind of illustrate how they were thinking of like winning the whole thing after they beat Syracuse, right? They were thinking of how many more. They were wrong about the number, but they were thinking about how many more they needed to win the whole thing. And if you look at what was in front of them from that point forward, it was Duke, the 2 seed in the tournament, UVA, the 3 seed in the tournament, and then UNC, the 1 seed in the tournament. That's the expected path they would have had to take. And they weren't shy from talking about it. So the vibe from them was wildly optimistic. I think most of us, and I would even put myself into it, most of the media, most of the fans thought, this is a nice story, right? Oh, look, they're the first team to go from Tuesday to Friday. Like, oh, look at this. They upset Duke. How nice is that? Oh, they really played well against Syracuse. Why couldn't they do that earlier in the year? And that trepidation, any of that kind of nervousness completely was not within the team. No matter what they had going on, they believed. And I think that's kind of the 1983 thing. That's kind of the survive and advance thing of very much, you don't need anyone else to believe as long as the right, however many the rotation is, 8, 9 guys, a couple coaches, like as long as they believe, that's all that mattered. And that's what they had.
Never give up, right? And I think it was easy for a lot of NC State fans, and even we talked about it on Pack Therapy. It was sort of easy to kind of maybe give up a little bit or not get too invested going into the ACC tournament. I mean, when you lose 4 straight, especially in the fashions that you did against Duke, North Carolina. I think of the game at Pitt when DJ Horne got injured midway through the first half. We'll get to DJ Horne in a second. But I think it was sort of easy going into – and I know you said that the Louisville game maybe was a little bit expected. I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here. Thinking back to the regular season when NC State played at Louisville, they won But Louisville, and I think this is fair to say just about Louisville as a team, even though their record might not show it, they were a very feisty team in the ACC. I mean, I remember when they played at Carolina, they kind of hung around a little bit. And they did the same thing with NC State, almost made I know you're kind of like,
maybe.
But at KFC, basically what I'm getting at is that I hate to say it, I wasn't too optimistic for them going into the Louisville game.
When they were down 12 in the first half against Louisville, I very much thought they had a choice, right? They could pack it in, say this was a terrible season. I think Kevin Keats' job would have been gone. We'll talk about that. And it would have been other athletes have made that decision to just say this is bad. Let's cut bait. Let's move on. Instead, like when I say this is the greatest ACC tournament run in ACC history, that's not an exaggeration. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not making something up. They're the first team ever to start on a Tuesday and play 4 games. They won 5. They're the first team ever to play 4. They won 5. They beat the number 1 seed, the number 2 seed, the number 3 seed. They beat Duke and Carolina. They beat 2 top 15 teams. They won on buzzer beaters to force overtime. They won on games they controlled from start to finish. And it all goes back to being down 12 against Louisville. They had a choice to make there, and they decided we're going to fight all the way to the end because there might be, 2% chances that we make it happen, and they made it happen. Here's another one. This is another fun stat I saw on Twitter, and so don't credit me with it. It was somewhere on social media, and I believe whoever it was, Adam Gold, retweeted it. So you can go find it, who it is there, to give the proper attribution. There are 6 teams in the ACC that have won national championships ever in their history. 6 teams. There's NC State, who has 2. And then every team they beat in this tournament. They beat Louisville, has an NCAA championship. They beat Syracuse, has an NCAA championship. They beat Duke, has a whole bunch of them. They beat UVA, has an NCAA championship. They beat UNC, has a whole bunch of them. Every team in the ACC that has a national championship, other than themselves, was lined up in a row trying to stop them from winning this ACC title, and they knocked them all off in sequence in 5 days. It's not an exaggeration. Probably the most improbable and most impressive ACC tournament run of all time.
I think sometimes you get caught up in just the fact of the matter of the game being played that you kind of forget the magnitude, as you mentioned, of the teams are playing. I mean, beating number 2 Duke Friday, beating number 3 Virginia in overtime, and honestly, kind of not falling to the gook and the gunk that is. Well, they kind of did.
They came out alive somehow.
They came out alive. Thanks to a Michael O'Connell shot that I still don't think has actually fallen from the rooftops of Capital One Arena. And then number 1 UNC on Saturday. Like, I think state fans are going to look back one day, and maybe even today while they're watching on Pat Therapy. By the way, thank you to everybody that's tuned in right now. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I think they'll look back one day and just be in awe of the teams that they beat, especially once they got to Duke on Thursday. Great programs and coaches who have done a great job, as you mentioned, to win ACC championships in previous times.
Let's talk Kevin Keats' job for a second. If they lose to Louisville, I think he doesn't have a job. I think their hand is forced and they have to move on from him. He had a clause in his contract that says if he wins the ACC championship, not only does he get a 2-year extension, he gets a giant raise, like $400,000.
Cha-ching.
That is the definition of watch me work, right? That is the definition of somebody hold my beer. I'm going to go show you how this works. And like the term standing on business, the term, like everything that sports should be about, right? You can count me out, but we're going to have to play the games too. And until it's 000 on the clock, I still have a chance. And now he's the guy moving forward, right? Now it's not a hot seat. Matter of fact, it's a pretty cool seat, right? And he has a financial commitment that is pretty aggressive. And he has an ACC championship for the first time in 37 years for the school. There's these moments in kind of programs' histories, right? Where like some great coaches have lost a lot early on. I covered Virginia Tech football for some time. Yeah. Frank Beamer would never have been able to keep his job if he were today, right? It was 3-4 years of losing. And then right when the seat gets hottest, he flipped it and he became a super duper legend. Coach K, right? His first couple years in Duke were not the Coach K that we know about. And right when that seat was just maybe percolating, he flips it around. You know, that 1986 senior class, when they were recruited, it became the whole thing. And you know, who knows if this is going to look back and be like, geez, they were almost moving on from Keats after year 7. And then he had that magical run, and look where they are now. You don't know that for certain, but he has a chance. And as he just proven, he's dangerous when you give him a chance.
And I think it goes without saying, the 7 years of maybe, I don't want to say mediocrity, but just everything that NC State fans have put up with, it's gone now. Like you can throw that in the trash, right? After everything that's happened. I mean, winning your first ACC championship, as you mentioned, 37 years, I think that buries everything that's happened in Kevin Keats' past, for better or for worse.
Yeah, I don't think you forget about it. I just think you say this is the good now outweighs the bad. Yeah. Right? 3 out of 7 NCAA tournaments still isn't enough. This is a program that should be in the NCAA tournament every year, but you'll never take the 2024 5 days in DC ACC tournament away from them. It's one of those timeless things, and you're like you can't take it away. It's yours now. And you said we're going to talk DJ Horne. Let's talk DJ Horne. 919 stand up.
Yeah.
That is, he said it's for the city. He came home for a year. Like, that is everything you want in a program. That's what the transfer portal is good for. You have a guy from the area who is playing at Arizona State and has 1 year of eligibility. He's a stud. He comes back, plays for his hometown school, brings them their first ACC championship since 37 years. Like, that is everything that's good about it. He plays through an injury. He plays through foul trouble. He's a shot maker. He's a fan favorite. He's DJ Horne, the legend.
And I mean, I think all that you just mentioned really showed at the end of the game with just how emotional he was. I mean, I think it was honestly, if you're a State fan, you can say it was beautiful seeing guys like DJ Horne, Casey Morsell, just kind of brought over with emotion at the idea of realizing, wow, like we just accomplished this.
When he went back in the game with like 10 minutes left and 4 fouls, and the first thing he does is fly full speed, like he's taking off a runway into the paint, absorbs contact, right? Not afraid of picking up offensive fouls, makes it and one, and then primal scream to the sideline. It was one of the first times it was like known. It's like, oh, they're winning this game. Up to that point, it was, well, UNC can come back. UNC's a second half team. Oh, be careful. When he hit that and one, I went, oh, they're winning this game.
Speaking of standing on business, I don't know about you, but to me, did it just feel like NC State was playing? I mean, you're going to say, yeah, Doug Graham, they were, but it just felt like there was the confidence and the energy that NC State brought. I think maybe once around Wednesday going into Thursday. Like, I remember, I don't know why this stands out to me, but Thursday, as they showed, the team arriving. The reason why I keep looking over to my left, ladies and gentlemen, is because I have the selection show on the screen, as Tim does in the studio as well. We're going to see where NC State's going to be playing the first round. But I think back to when it showed DJ Horne and DJ Burns walking into Capital One Arena before the Duke game, and they just had on like black leather jackets or coats, black sunglasses. I was like, man, they're walking around with some swagger about them. Like, they're starting to feel themselves a little bit. And I think it showed. And honestly, you kind of have to have that little bit of mentality when it's a win or go home situation.
Duke is a 4 seed, which is a little interesting. That just saw that.
Oh, there it is.
But going off what you're saying, I can kind of one up you because we were in DC. After the Duke win, it was Dennis was walking behind. So the way they do the media is most of the guys stay in the locker room. They open up the locker room. 2 guys and the coach get called to the podium. They go to the podium. Dennis, however it worked out, right? I was in the locker room. He ends up being behind Casey Morsell and DJ Horne when they're walking from the podium after their media availability back to the locker room. And Dennis heard them kind of hyping each other up in the hallway, saying, like, we have to go win this. We have to go win this. And you're right. It was a confidence. It was an upbeat. It was everything you're looking for. And there it is. I will tell you how it stands. In the South region, the 11th seed, NC State, against Texas Tech, the 6th seed. They are Texas Tech is 23-10. They just happen to play in a better conference. I say that with air quotes for those of you not watching this on YouTube. I like that matchup.
I like that. I don't know why. I like that's in Pittsburgh. Gives Wolfpack fans a chance to travel.
On the other side of their 4-team bracket. So if they win, they'll play the winner of Kentucky and Oakland. Obviously, Kentucky would be a taller task, but when you're an 11 seed, you don't have much to beggars can't be choosers. I don't hate the Texas Tech matchup. I think State will be able to out-tough them. I'd also say this: they're an 11 seed who's not in the play-in, so you don't have to play in the Dayton play-in games because those 11 seeds are half of them are played for in the play-in game. So you're guaranteed into the big dance. I'm fine with that matchup completely.
Yeah, I haven't watched much Texas Tech this season. The only time I really watched them is when they played Texas in their big rivalry game, and they were very feisty against Texas, who I believe was either top 5 or top 10 program at that time. And maybe some of that feistiness just comes with the rivalry game. But 23-10, Texas Tech, 23-14, obviously NC State in Pittsburgh. NC State also. Let's just kind of talk about. They've been put kind of in a nice region, playing with Kentucky, Oakland, Florida's in there too. Marquette and Western Kentucky will play.
I believe they are in the bottom half of the South region. The top half.
That's in Indianapolis. Okay, yeah.
The top half does have Houston as the 1 seed, and I believe Duke in Brooklyn against Vermont is also in the South region. So they're in the same region as State, which, I mean, the Elite 8 would be where they're matching up because they're in different halves of the region. But there's, if true magic happens, they could get a rematch. And now we bring on one of our guests live on YouTube, Mike. So we're rolling. Mike Glennon, former NC State quarterback. We normally do the football version of Pack Therapy. But Mike, how's it feel to go to a basketball school, right? I
think the whole point of this podcast being named Pack Therapy was to get us through the times of the dark days, and it looks like we finally made it out. And it's just, man, it was awesome to watch last night. I haven't been an NC State fan for 37 years. I've only been an NC State fan for 16 years. But to see us finally get a championship, it's awesome for the basketball team, awesome for the fans. I think it's just, man, through the thick and the thin, they stick with us, and I think that's the greatest thing about NC State fans. So to finally get one, it was a special night.
And this team, right? Jaden Taylor has an ankle hurt in the final, and he's finding any ways to be out there. Morcell's cramping up, and he's running into the tunnel, and then he's finding any way to be out there. DJ Horn has a hip flexor issue, doesn't play in the first game, and then he's coming off the bench, finding any way to be out there. It's almost like this team was perfect for State fans, right? It's the tough blue collar, and then they come back to win it all.
It really was. I mean, I don't know. I'd be lying if I'd said I didn't kind of count them out last week. Like how much things changed in the matter of 5 days is remarkable. And like you said, the whole group kind of took on the attitude of the fan base of that blue collar, and they fought through the injuries, and it was not done the easy way. Like I was hoping that Pitt would beat UNC because I thought that would be easier. But now it's even sweeter that it was against Carolina. Like it was not the road less traveled. It was it was the toughest road they could face. I mean, to beat the 1, 2, and 3 seed in the tournament, it really was remarkable. And I mean, I guess Louisville, it was not promising. Like it was like, wow, we might actually lose to Louisville. And the next thing you know, a couple of days later, keep waiting for them to run out of steam, the fatigue to set in, to playing back-to-back games, and they never showed that fatigue, and they fought through it, and it was a lot of fun as a fan to watch the entire week.
Mike Glennon joined us here on this live edition of Pack Therapy. Mike, different sports, same mindset. Tim brought up how in that first round game against Louisville when they're down by 12, as a team, as someone who's played a team sport, I'm going to kind of tie this into your 37 comeback that you guys had against Maryland and you went to the locker room. What do you think goes into that huddle for NC State just as a team as far as, hey, guys, this is either shut up or go. This is either our time to put up or shut up, or, we can keep fighting, we can keep battling. What do you think was kind of the conversations amongst the team in a situation like that?
Yeah. I mean, going back to that game against Maryland, Tim was that. We ended up at Rum Runners that night. Piano bar downtown, no longer here. But I think, honestly, that probably is a pretty good comparison. I wouldn't say 27 points. 12 points in a basketball game isn't quite the same as 27 in a football game, but it was like, it's just a matter of we're beating ourselves. Like, we are better than this team. I think Maryland was like 1-10 or 2-8 or whatever, or 2-9. I don't remember, but it was like, we just have to go out and execute our game. And honestly, for us, a whole lot wasn't said. It was just like, let's go do it out on the field, and for them, do it out on the court. We're better than Louisville. Now we just got to play like it.
I didn't mean. I was just going to say, I didn't mean to make 37 sound like it was. I didn't mean to make that game sound worse than it was.
No.
It was in elementary school for context when that game happened.
I think it's a good comparison. I'm just saying that the parallel is look, we're better than this team. There's no reason we should be down to them. If we just play our game, then we can get right back in this thing.
I actually think that's the best part of the Duke and North Carolina win specifically. They didn't do anything special, right? It was like DJ Burns on the block is what they do when DJ Burns is in the game, and it was darn near unstoppable. They didn't. It didn't feel like they were just the better team in those games. You kept waiting for, especially in the UNC game, because they're such a second half team, like waiting for them to make their run, waiting for them to take the lead, and State was just consistently the better team. Mike, I'll give you a quick story. I actually watched the championship with your brother, who played football at Virginia Tech. And it was kind of awesome to watch the game with someone who had never watched DJ Burns before, because it was like he was experiencing something for the first time, where he's going like, how do you stop this guy? He runs you over and then he lays it up. This is unbelievable. Why is he not making $27 million a year playing offensive tackle in the NFL right now? And it was, I don't know if we're all desensitized to it, because we've watched DJ over the last 2 years, but he did have moments where it was like, give me the ball, I'm just going to lower my shoulder and lay it up. And that has to be one of the more fan favorite things that an NC State basketball team has seen in a long time.
Without a doubt, since I've been following NC State, I can't think of a player that the fan base rallied around more than DJ Burns. And he's just got this, I don't want to say infectious personality, but there's just something about him that you're like, you want to pull for him, and he's exciting, but he looks friendly. And I can't really describe it. Honestly, last year I felt like was crazier than this year. It was like anytime he touched the ball, the whole crowd would go crazy. And this year, I think it was because kind of that lure kind of faded away. It was like, we've seen this guy, and really in the beginning of the year, he wasn't quite as effective as he was last year. But man, he was great. I have the same thought. I'm like, this dude, has he ever put on pads? I mean, I think he doesn't necessarily move great for a basketball player, but he probably moves pretty well for a football player. And he's got the size. I don't know if soft touch leads to anything on the football field, but I mean, it truly is incredible that the way he plays and the excitement he brings in a different kind of way than someone like Steph Curry or someone that's a like a high flyer, slam dunk type guy.
And he gets it right in the Duke game. I was in the arena, and about halfway through, right, the UVA game was next, so UVA fans were filing in, and it wasn't just people that were wearing red were rooting for NC State. Every big play, because it was against Duke, you would see, the random UVA pairing get really, really loud, or a UNC fan would get really, really loud. And all of a sudden I look at DJ Burns, and DJ Burns is pumping up the crowd, and he's doing this, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of funny. And then after the game, the first thing he says to the media is, we know what it is. They weren't cheering for us. They were cheering against Duke. So it's almost like he's playing both sides of the fence. He's like using their energy to jack him up on the court. And then as soon as it's over, he's like, nah, I get it. So he's got that personality thing.
Yeah, I think he's, inked his way into being a true legend at NC State for years to come. Like, he'll forever be remembered. I think people would have, thought very highly of him just because of what we just talked about. But now to be the guy that was kind of the face of this team that kind of broke this streak and gave something our generation has never been able to see, I think he'll be kind of a living legend around Raleigh for the rest of his life.
Mike, let's talk about this. The team that NC State beat to win the ACC Championship. Just because I remember when I produced the football version of this, you were very passionate about going into the North Carolina week, about how much the rivalry means for State and North Carolina. You could say for football, it's pretty even, maybe even more favored towards NC State. But for basketball, what's sort of the guidelines for State fans as they enter their cubicles this week and they get to sit beside their friends or their coworkers that are Carolina fans?
We have had football for a good part of the past, I feel like 2 decades where basketball hasn't been that way. And now we finally have that. And like the one that got me a few weeks ago, I saw that Theo Pinson guy started ragging on NC State fans like we're Cowboys fans. Like, we are far from Cowboy fans. We're more similar to like Bills fans or Browns fans. We're like the blue collar, the ones that haven't won anything. We're not like Cowboys fans. And again, that's what I just love about NC State fans. Just through way more bad times than good, they've stuck through it all. And moments like last night make it all worth it. So, I think, I was out at my son's baseball game today, and I saw a lot of NC State hats, more than normal, it felt like. And I feel like people are walking around with their chests out a little. It's almost like, man, I can't even imagine what it's like to not have won an ACC championship since like 2016. Like what is going on here? I mean, Carolina has nowhere to talk anything. I guess they won a national championship not too long ago. But your only good is your last year, and we beat them in football. We beat them in basketball when it actually counted most. We still have March Madness, so we'll see how that goes. They're probably getting announced as a 1 seed as we speak. I don't know.
Well, speaking of, is Pittsburgh too far to drive? Pittsburgh versus Texas Tech. That's number 11 versus number 6.
I think it's a little too far for me to drive, but I'm sure some NC State fans will make their way. Maybe there's a direct flight from Raleigh to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I want to go to Pittsburgh.
Well, my son wants to go to Pittsburgh.
We can do a Pat Therapy road trip, it sounds like.
Let's do it. I mean, is there anything left to say? We said it. Actually, I'll end the pod with this. On Friday, on whatever the day before the tournament was, Monday, we said that there was like one path for State to save their season. Right? It wasn't like they had 9 different ways. I just watched the end of the Players Championship live. And it's not like, you could go in, right side of the fairway, lay up, stick it close. There you go, par. Or you could go mash it down the middle, 2-putt par. Like, they had one way. They had to use every different tool in their tool bag to win each of these games. And they had to win them all. And they had to do 5 games in 5 days. And they had to knock off the 3 best teams. And they did it. So now they get to go play in the NCAA tournament. Kevin Keats gets an extension after everyone was talking about his job. DJ Burns, and I would say DJ Horn because he's a local kid and he led the team. 2 guys that forever when they get shown on the Jumbotron inside either Reynolds or PNC, it's going to be a big pop.
And for that matter, Michael O'Connell, a guy that kind of flew under the radar all year, that play is going to be shown at NC State for many years to come. And I'm sure eventually people will think it was like a game winner. That they don't know that actually just sent it in overtime. But that's what I'll think of, 20 years from now, I'll think of him hitting that shot and kind of DJ Burns and DJ Horn.
I'm calling that shot the Spinaroonie.
Spinaroonie.
That's what I'm going to let you call that shot, the Spinaroonie shot.
Do you know what I respect about Michael O'Connell? Once he made it, he just did like a little flex.
Yeah.
I think he was very much like, wasn't what I was planning to do. Like, no. Didn't call bank, but little flex. He didn't go too over the top with it.
Yeah, and it was like probably we still haven't won it, but yes, I'm sure he did not plan on that ball going in, and definitely not in that manner.
It was not one that like when it left the hand, he was like, "It's good."
Yeah.
The media members on press row showed more emotion than Michael O'Connell did after he hit that shot.
Job's not finished, which I guess you might say about all this, right? The ACC tournament was an awesome buzzer beater to get you to overtime, and now The overtime is the NCAA tournament. State's an 11 seed. They do not have to play in the play-in games in Dayton, which is clutch as an 11 seed. They play Texas Tech, a team that I think they have a good chance in Pittsburgh. And that's our selection edition or selection Sunday edition of the show. Anything to add? Anybody? Nope. Cool.
Mike, I have one question. I just because I'm gonna ask a devil's advocate question. Not to try to make the comparison of one program is better than the other, but how lightly do State fans need to tread now heading into a big football season that they're expecting now that the basketball team just won the ACC Championship?
Well, I think that this kind of shows just what I feel like NC State always been is when expectations are highest, things don't go well, and then when expectations are low, things go best. And a week ago, expectations were pretty low. And I will just give a little preview. I went to NC State's practice. I think it was 2 weeks ago now. And that receiving corps, it's the best group I've seen since I've been a part of NC State. So
what I would be doing if I were NC State football right now is calling up all these very, very happy, very, very good mood fans and donors and let's do it in football season. Open up your checkbook.
It's just what happened after we beat Carolina. That Doran says 5,000 people give $1,000 or whatever it was.
Was TJ Burns awesome? He was a transfer. Was TJ Horn?
TJ Horn.
He was.
Yeah. No, the collectives need to strike while the iron's hot. I don't know how they divvy where the money goes, but they need to feed off each other because fans' excitement about NC State sports has got to be at an all-time high.
I know the spring game, which is coming up, I think April 7th, or just in a couple of weeks, the attendance is usually free. Maybe this is the time that you just ask for small donations as fans walk into the stadium for the spring game. Yeah,
I think they have. I think they've done that in the past since NIL kind of got started. So,
autographs at halftime. Make it happen. Capitalize on it.
Soon he's going to just start putting that money in his own pocket.
You break him something. No, you break him all something. Everybody's getting their beak wet. Mike, we appreciate it. Graham, as always, we'll see everybody next week for back there.
All right.
Dad, look. Dad.